Hi everyone. So our friend and perennial contributor of Great Question, Sales Strife, has been asking more questions, including the interestingly provocative question, which it is both provocative and interesting. There's possibilities for real insight there. She was asking the following question: if INFJs tend to live in their minds, if INFJs spend most of their time in their heads, if INFJs are alienated from external reality, if that's their basic mode of existence, their primary mode of existence, why not just continue living in their heads? What's so good about engaging external reality if the external world is perceived to be hostile? Okay, so in a nutshell, the answer I would give is that the notion that you as an INFJ, that we as INFJs live entirely in our heads is a fantasy. It's a fantasy because we have to engage with external reality all the time. It's a fantasy because when we are in our heads, we are most of the time in our NI world. NI does not function autonomously. NI needs to be fed with new information. It can't just circle on itself eternally, right? I mean, this is going to promote looping and ITI looping, among other things. That's one of its forms. But essentially, you need SE to feed you new information. Otherwise, even your solipsism, because the idea of just embracing life in your head is another name for solipsism. So it's a clear choice, right, of a mode of interaction with external reality that INFJs can opt for, and sometimes certainly do opt for. But there's a certain illusion there. The illusion being that we live entirely in our heads. I think the more correct rendition of this phenomenon is that we apprehend external reality through a very thick, very thick prism of subjectivity, NI subjectivity. But you need to have an object too, and the object is an external reality. From a logistical point of view, there's probably the vast majority of INFJs probably couldn't even afford to live in their heads all the time, because how would they be able to guarantee their own future? What about their primary needs, their basic needs, like paying for bills, paying for groceries, paying for rent? I mean, this is something I discuss in the Infinite Soul. You know, like the life of the solipsist usually implies a commitment, either a commitment to very strong asceticism, like a hermit-like, very modest kind of existence, and you see examples of that in the biblical text, for example. Or being born in a very rich family where basically you don't need to worry about your needs. Your needs are covered by your family, right? The wealth, your family wealth, just ensures that you can just choose to live however you want to live, including by withdrawing from the world. But that's, you know, how many people are from wealthy enough families that can have this kind of lifestyle, or alternatively, how many people are willing to embrace a completely ascetic, monkish kind of lifestyle? So these are the implications here, right? So for most INFJs, including most INFJ solipsists, it's not a realistic long-term view. And you have to also understand that this is going to be a big source of anxiety. And perhaps this is what will be most telling and what will speak to people most, right? This idea that the solipsistic INFJ is in an attempt to protect themselves from the anxiety of engagement with the external world, they create other form of anxiety, and they set themselves up for more anxiety in the future. Number one, anxiety about the material conditions of a satisfactory existence. So that's what we talked about when we talked about logistics and what's implied at the material level. So that's a kind of an objective kind of anxiety. And a more subjective kind of anxiety, which is the anxiety of NI stagnation. Like I said, NITI looping is not anxiety inducing in itself. It has its outcome eventually begins to be anxiety, because when it loops back on itself constantly, it's not really coming up with any sense of novelty. It's not really coming up with new insights, because in order to replenish your store of insights, you need to have it, as an accompaniment to that, as a supplement to that, as a kind of tank, as a data tank that you require as an addendum. You need information. You need external information for NI to process. So NI needs to be supplied with new information, and that all has to come from external reality at some level. Otherwise, NI stagnation is going to happen. Now, NI stagnation is not the repression of NI, you understand. The repression of NI is something that is done by adaptive submissive INFJs. NI stagnation means you are within your NI, but you're actually not really making any progress. And we know, clinically, scientifically, psychotherapeutically, it is now well known that the feeling of being stagnating, of being stuck, is a great source of anxiety for people. Not for, and let's not forget that also means that while you're stagnating in that way and not engaging with external reality, you're not building up the equipment, the cognitive and behavioral and affective equipment to get out of that mode and go out and meet external reality head on. So it can also be a vicious circle. The more you wait, the less confident you will be that you'll be able to make the step outside. So you have to be careful. I think the lesson in this is that we all have to be careful not to be too solipsistic. We're always going to be a little bit solipsistic because that's in the nature of NI fascination with archetypes that are internal, but not too solipsistic. Okay? Now, hopefully that answers the question. Give me a like if you enjoyed the video. Don't forget, I have written 2 books where I discuss all these topics in more detail. The latest one is The Infinite Soul and INFJ Life in the Modern World. So if you want to dig deeper, if you want to dive, if you want a deep dive, get this book. It's available at the first link below, and it's good. Check the reviews. And if you have the book, if you've read it and loved it but not reviewed it, please consider reviewing it, because it helps with the referencing. Helps me a lot, and it's just a few minutes of your time. The prequel that you may already be familiar with is the Ecstatic Soul, and you look at the INFJ personality. This looks at the inside of the INFJ mind, what's in the INFJ head, how the INFJ mind is structured, and what the consciousness of being INFJ is like. Okay, so get that book as well. Finally, as you know, the lifeblood of my channel is my Patreon page. From $3.50 a month, you can really support me to keep going with this channel. There's a growing community there on Patreon, and you can access some bonus content, talk to me directly. Very soon I'll start making some videos where I go deeper with longer videos into various aspects and topics I discuss in my books and in my videos here. So consider it, and I'll talk to you next time, guys. Bye bye.